going to take over the world of developers. But we can contribute to that. Developers will adopt behavior-driven development and new tools. So I was right about that, I think, in my humble opinion. That makes sense to me still. Some system tests and most acceptance tests will be business model driven. By that I mean we will create better models to simulate how our businesses will use our systems. And we will use those as a basis for tests. That would take another half day to explain. But what I'm trying to say is we will use business process modeling to help us design tests. We have to do that before we build the software because the process we build and then use to test will drive the development itself. If we try and do it retrospectively, we can't do it in an hour. Business models plus stories will increasingly become contractual. The story I told this morning, in the session I ran this morning, I talked about a client of ours who used requirements plus stories to pin their supplier down. In fact, it worked for both parties. The supplier did really well out of it as well. You need both a requirement and an example to define the need. So if you do that, if an organization is comfortable writing requirements and then creating business stories with examples, they can offer that to tender. And the developers will love it because they'll say, I've got a requirement, great, and I've got examples of those features in use. And bloody hell, if I press a button, I even get some test automation code out of it. This is fantastic. Oh, I must be charging less money for this because I'm getting more assistance. It's cheaper. System tests will be generated from stories or will be outsourced. That is, if you can't be bothered to be clever, you'll offshore it. Testing isn't valued as much as we would all love it to be, but I think people are getting a little bit fed up with paying these guys over here to check the work of these guys over here. Now, testing's not going to go away, of course, absolutely not. But people are asking this question again. Why do I need to pay all these people to do a job I think these guys should do when they do their job properly? That question is being asked because money is tight. Developers write code. They've got a deliverable that people value. Testers produce something intangible. We produce stuff that's incredibly valuable, but it's still intangible. We haven't made progress on making testing tangible to people who pay for it. Manual system test execution will be outsourced and in the cloud. I think so. Why would I hire people to do testing? It's a question you should ask yourself. You know, if you are a supplier of testing services, you need to ask that question. Okay? That's my answer. Maybe half of all acceptance tests will be automated in continuous integration. So what will happen is the concept of acceptance will move from massively complex end-to-end testing to a lot more very focused, feature-based checks. That's what agile teams are doing today. It's not scaled, but people are going to scale it. They might not call it agile, but they are going to do this. I'm convinced. So the concept of acceptance will change a little bit because you might only have 1 hour to do it. You haven't got time to get clever. New tools that manage the full requirement storage scenarios works well today. I would say this, wouldn't I, since we've built one. But what I mean by this is, at the moment, we have requirements tools that do not connect with the design of code, unless you generate code directly from models. And the people who've tried that have had difficulty. We don't have a natural flow, end to end. Tomorrow I'll talk about how you do automation and how I think this can be done. But in principle, I'm suggesting requirements and stories and examples are captured in one place. Press a button, out pops some test code, and the developers follow their merry way. It doesn't seem to make sense to do it any other way. So, okay, so I've said some quite stark things, and I'm not going to defend them. I'm just going to say, here's a suggestion of a future world. You might not like it. If you don't like it, you can ignore it. If it worries you, maybe you should think about it, and then ignore it. But I'm trying to suggest that some organizations, this is what is happening, and they're having success. So some doors close, but others are opening. And I want to suggest, what are the opportunities for test managers, briefly? Because I talk to test managers. And I guess leaders are, well, most test managers think they are a leader. You can throw things later, okay? Where do you go? Upstream with stakeholders and analysis, providing testing and assurance skills to business. Work for the business. You are gold dust. You have insights into the performance of your software projects that no one else has. You are gold dust to the business that is investing in software. There's a job waiting for you. Managing requirements knowledge. Maybe you become a business analyst. I've got 2 or 3 friends who've actually done this, and they've said, well, it's a natural move. They ask exactly the same questions of exactly the same people, but much earlier in the process. And they get answers, and they say, we can avoid disaster. I have a friend who started off as a test manager. He's made his testers, who are all very expert. They're all from business. They've taken over business analysis, and now he's head of development. Worked for them. They're a product company. That was quite a nice career move, wasn't it? Test master. Okay, become a tester inside your agile teams. So I'll talk a little bit about test strategy tomorrow in the other session, and I'll talk more about this. But Scrum Masters, do we need them? What do they do? I don't know. Test Master has real value because they ask awkward questions of people working on difficult problems. Have you thought of this? Is there another way? Are we sure we understand what we're doing here? Let me give you some examples to test your understanding and our common shared knowledge. Test Master is a really valuable part of the team. It could be the tester, but they do more than test. In fact, they don't do much testing. They do more talking and argument and challenging and questioning, which is what testers do. 4, managing the information flows to and from the continuous integration process. There is a machine, I don't mean a computer, there is a machine which is designed to take code in at one end and squirt out trusted software to implement in production. Now, as part of that process, that generates a mountain of data. So we're into big data again, that kind of thinking. That could be a very valuable job. It sounds like, ooh, I'm not so interested in this. I might be managing data rather than people. Well, some people like managing data rather than people. Managing, monitoring outsourced or offshore teams. So it might be, again, this would be perhaps, I don't know if, do you guys offshore to anyone else? Not yet, but the day will come maybe, I don't know. It's all about economics, isn't it? But again, this is probably addressed to the Europeans, of course. But the principle there would be, you're going to lose your team. It's going to be offshored, and they're going to work a different way. Okay, well, I think it probably does. Okay, so those are my 5 things a manager could do, a test manager could do, a leader could do. But I've missed a slide there. No, I've missed 2 slides now. I'm sorry, there should be a title slide in between, which says something like, I want to talk about leadership now. So I'm combining kind of 3 talks here. I want to talk about leadership and discuss what it means to be a leader. How am I doing for time? I've got half an hour, have I? Ooh, I'm going to be done in 5 minutes. I've gone far too fast. Benjamin Disraeli, British Prime Minister in the 19th century. I must follow the people. Am I not their leader? Come on, someone laugh. Thank you, that's better. Right. This is the politician's view. We call our politicians our leaders, but in fact, they're not leaders of any kind, are they? Once a generation, there might be one good one. They're not a good example. The first responsibility of a leader is to define reality. This is where we are. The last is to say thank you. And in between, the leader is a servant, which is kind of interesting. And I've labeled that, this is the businessman's view. He's a businessman. I don't know him, but he's some American guy. Jeeves. Have you heard of, do you know Jeeves, the butler? Yeah, so he's the real boss. You get the idea? I think that's a different approach. Next. Lead me, follow me, or get out of my way. Pattern. I'm not sure this is so humane that we want to follow it too closely. A soldier's view. But he's got his view. Okay, he's a soldier. What the hell? You don't lead by pointing and telling people some place to go. You lead by going to that place and making a case. I'm over here. It's really great. Come and join me. That makes some sense. That's Ken Kesey. So he's an author. Now, what does he know about leadership? He's an author. But he's a radical author, wasn't he? He's a smart guy. You don't need a title to be a leader. How true is that? You know, in your team, or you are that person in your team who is the leader. They're the first to volunteer. They're the first to ask questions. The first to challenge. That's leadership. Okay? That kind of makes some sense as well. You've got to figure out where you are on this spectrum. A leader does not deserve the name unless he is willing, occasionally, to stand alone. I'm over here, come and join me, but the bullets are flying. Okay? You've got to be brave, haven't you? You've got to push to make things happen. You've got to trust your beliefs and stand there and say, this is a better place, and hope people follow you. The one quality that could be developed by studious reflection and practice is the leadership of men. Dwight D. Eisenhower. Okay? And he was a leader, I guess. He was also the guy that said, what was it? The plan is nothing, planning is everything. You familiar with that one? That's quite good, I think. Thinking is everything, the documentation, nothing. Thinking. So he's another soldier, but he's talking about intelligence, imagination, and consensus. He's got to bring people with him. Okay? Although he was a leader, everybody moved together with him. I start with the premise that the function of leadership is to produce more leaders, not more followers. This is the one that's most important to me. This is what we should be doing endlessly. Trying to get people to take ownership of their destiny, which sounds very grand, even if their destiny is just to make the tea in the afternoon. Okay? But we shouldn't be thinking of leadership as isolating ourselves from the rest of the community. Maybe we get paid more. That would be nice, sure. What I mean is, we should be thinking continuously about bringing everybody on with us. And we have to work as a team, or we fail as individuals. Who said that? Who said that? We work as a team or fail as individuals? I'm trying to remember myself. It was Al Pacino in... It'll come. Sunday. The American football film. Any Given Sunday. See, I'll get there in the end. Okay, and this is mine. Don't get so far ahead of people they cannot follow. So it's all very well me saying, 5-year plan, this is how it's going to be, you're all going to lose your jobs, you know. What a load of nonsense. Okay? I'm not suggesting what I've said is nonsense. I'm just trying to say, I'm just trying to get people thinking about their future. That's all I'm trying to do. I think some of the things I've said are part of your future. Some of it is a hunch. Some of it is turning out to be, I think, well-founded. And the reason I say that is because I think I need to, blank sheet of paper. No, I think I need to keep clicking. Sorry, I've not done this for a little while. So these are papers I've written over the years, and some of them have turned out to be, I think, quite important. The very first one I wrote, which was my first Eurostar, was called I can't even remember what it was. It was 20 years ago. A unified approach to system functional testing. Doesn't that grab you? Yeah, fantastic. What it was about was basically suggesting that we decompose requirements into things called behaviors and use those behaviors to validate requirements. Which sounds pretty similar to what I'm saying now about stories. So maybe I'm just flogging a dead horse, and I've been at it for 20 years or whatever. But the thing is, the time wasn't right then. But the time is right for all the things I've mentioned. Okay, some of them are just too advanced for you yet. That doesn't mean you should ignore them. They might still be coming towards you. I'm not saying the things I've done. I'm saying the things I've mentioned, the 10 forecasted things that might happen to you. So every now and then you have to stand still and let people catch up. If you get ahead of yourself, you're isolated. So you have to be careful about this. Okay? So I'm not suggesting you go out and say, Paul says this, and bang, I'm going to go out and do it. That's not what I'm saying. Consider it. So, will test leaders stand up? And I'm assuming you guys are the leadership of the community around here. Or am I in the wrong room? Here are the cliches, I think, you need to kill. And there are some arguments I think you need to make. And this is where the bravery comes in. Developers write code, testers test because developers can't. That has got to go. Developers are being told they are not professional developers unless they can test. Endlessly. It might take a generation, but they will get there, I think. There'll be incompetent ones, of course, but that will be expected of them. So we need to be prepared to give up some of the testing that we do at the moment. There could be an end to manual feature checking. If all our features are described in terms of stories with scenarios, which can be translated into test code, which can then be run automatically, we don't need to manually check again. Now that's a huge statement and a huge ambition. You know, I know you're going to say, that will never happen. Well, it won't happen if you don't try, but I would argue, if you can think of a check and the automation already exists, why the hell would you go and do it manually? That would be stupid. And if you go and suggest that to your boss, I need to hire a team of 10 people to go and do manualify. But essentially, a check is something that we think a tool could do better. That would be my definition. I'm not going to complicate it. I think tools should be doing this. And I think that's good enough for me. If I think tools should be doing this, I probably have enough experience to know that actually a tool could do this. Testing doesn't just apply to software, existing software, at the end. I'm a strong advocate of thinking in terms of testing systems and not software. And I've said this to about 5 people today already, sorry about this. But a system could be, let me think of that, an electric toothbrush, or it could be an aeroplane, a Boeing 787. That's a system. That's a system. That's what we test. We don't just test software. We have to think more broadly about what our role in business is. And it's more than testing code. If you want to test code, that's fantastic. But I think that will never be highly regarded in our business. I think we need to set out our stall to say, we deal in test. Okay? That's what we do. And we test anything. I think that should be our attitude more and more. But essentially, we test systems that can be tested. We test early, and we test often. We don't just test at the end. And what we do when we test early might not be called testing anymore. But our discipline, our skill, allows us to do it, and to do it with value. Testing is about measuring achievement, not quality. Again, one of my hobby horses. If all we do is talk about bugs, people will think we're the garbage collector. You know, if that's all we ever do, good luck. I think that is such a low-level thing. It's incredibly important. Garbage collection is important. And when people go on strike and garbage doesn't get collected, it's a disaster. But they still don't get paid a lot. They're not highly regarded. If all we talk about is bugs, we must lift our game. We need to align delivery with project goals, and that's a project-wide activity. Testing exists to demonstrate achievement. And if we are not achieving, we are either exposing risk or failure